how do you make a product that's not just another 200-watt LED fixture? Well, this curiously shaped light would appear to be Zhiyun's answer to that question. It's called the MOLUS G200, and functionally, yes, it is just another 200-watt LED fixture, but at this point, you'd have probably guessed that its value is in its uniquely small form factor. Looks-wise, it is definitely unconventional. We are so used to seeing COB lights being longer than they are tall, and this G200 just looks flat by comparison. When you put it on a big softbox, the fixture just kind of looks like an end cap. It does get a separate control box. The box plugs into the lamp by a 2-meter long head cable, which is fixed to the control box's head. Now, depending on how you look at it, if you add the bulk and weight of the control box plus the lamp head together, that combined footprint of the whole setup might not sound all that impressive anymore, but I still think it was the right call to separate this light into 2 modules, because we then end up with a lamp head that weighs just over a kilogram. And that's the weight that needs to fly when you go ahead and rig this light up. If it needs to go high up on the light stand, the lesser the weight up top, the more stable it is. But personally, I found this to be the perfect light to boom over something on a C-stand. There's definitely lower amounts of anxiety when I fly the G200 instead of a bigger, heavier light on a C-stand. And despite the light being overhead, you've still got your controls for it comfortably within reach. I've gone as far as securing the light with just a super clamp, and it was perfectly feasible. But if you do ever try this yourself, be sure to safety cable it and bear in mind your bones mount accessories can't be too heavy. Now, what really seals it for this light though is how none of this mobility comes at the expense of output. It is still a full-fledged 200-watt light which you can easily rig about as you please. I compared it against my Amaran 200X, which is also a 200-watt bicolor COB fixture, and the MOLUS was ever so slightly brighter. However, and this is a very big however, when it comes to output, the G200 still has one more very sneaky trick up its sleeve. The hint is when you look at the face of the light, the chip looks a bit big for a 200-watt light. And that's because it kind of isn't. On the control box, if you hold down both the knobs, it will engage max mode, essentially a boost setting which lets you drive the light at 300 watts. Now, of course, I had to find out how much brighter it gets. Turns out you gain about 2/3 of a stop, which is actually very significant. Remember, this is being sold as a 200-watt light, so this is a pretty lovely case of over-delivering. Whatever it was you were using it for, you have the option of doing it brighter. Now, the user manual does say that if the light runs too hot in max mode, it will automatically exit back into 200-watt mode. I tried to see how long it might take for that to happen, say in a studio setting, and a little over 2 hours later, my camera's battery died. The light, though, was still on max mode and didn't show any intentions of stopping. It wasn't running abnormally hot either, never mind the fact that it was being overdriven at 300 watts. Not that I was doing the light any favors either, I purposely left the air conditioning off. So, I do take comfort in knowing that when we use this normally as a 200 watt light, it's got heaps of thermal headroom and it's operating very comfortably within its capabilities despite the extra compact form factor. And when you do need to use the 300 watt max mode, it's also nice to know that it is not a gimmick. You can run it indoors for hours at 300 watts without issues, making it an actually useful feature instead of being just one for the headlines. One thing I should note is fan noise is noticeably louder when running it in max mode. When you bring it back down to 200 watts, it then becomes barely audible. For anyone concerned about the actual power draw, in normal mode, full brightness at 4300 Kelvin, it draws a few watts over 200 from the wall, and in max mode, it goes up to just under 350 watts. Controls for the lights are about as minimal as they come. There's a hook to hang the control box off the light stand, and in the rather minimal control area, you've got one knob for brightness and the other for color temperature. You can press on each knob to cycle between a few preset values, and you already know know what happens when you press them both in at the same time. I also measured the light at full brightness over a few CCT values with my Sekonic C700, and these were the readings for anyone interested. We've quite recently seen what Zhiyun could do when it comes to making lights unexpectedly small, and this entry into the 200 watts category was very interesting to witness. It's a physically larger class of lights now. We've got baby pins and full-size Bowens mounts, but they've still made it small enough to make you go, how did they do that? And not just that, it has the ability to outclass itself on demand. It can just become a 300 watts when you need it to. So the MOLUS G200 is definitely an unusual light, but in a very useful way.